Have you ever really stopped to think about how a tiny handful of people can govern millions, sometimes even billions of us? I mean, on the surface, it makes absolutely no sense. Well, the 18th century philosopher David Hume asked that exact same question, and his answer is a single word that just might change how you see all of government. So let's break this really profound idea down.
So this is the big puzzle, right? In any country, the people, the governed, they always have the sheer physical force on their side. We just massively outnumber the rulers. If it ever came down to a simple contest of strength, the government would lose, every single time. So, how does this system even work? What's the secret sauce holding it all together?
And boom, here it is. This is Hume's startling answer. He argues that the ultimate source of power isn't force, it's not laws, it's not even money. It is, in just one word, opinion. Just the simple collective belief of the people. This one idea, he says, is the foundation for every single government that has ever existed.
Okay, but what does Hume really mean by opinion? It's not like, your opinion on pizza toppings. This goes way, way deeper than a casual preference. So let's really unpack what Hume meant by this powerful word.
A good way to think about it is like the invisible foundation of a massive skyscraper. For Hume, opinion is this silent, collective agreement that gives rulers permission to rule. It's the shared belief system that makes them legitimate. And if that foundation starts to crack, if people stop believing, the entire building's going to come tumbling down.
And here's where his argument gets really radical. He says this principle is universal. This isn't just for democracies or free societies. No, even the most brutal military dictator, he insists, ultimately rules by opinion. A sultan might treat his ordinary subjects like dirt, but he has to command his own soldiers by convincing them of his authority. Their opinion is literally all he has.
All right, so if government is built on this foundation of opinion, what's that foundation actually made of? Well, Hume doesn't just stop there. He breaks it down even further into three main pillars that, together, create and sustain a ruler's authority. Let's take a look at what they are.
So here they are, the three core ingredients. You've got the opinion of interest, the opinion of right to power, and the opinion of right to property. According to Hume, these three beliefs, all working together, form the absolute bedrock of any stable government.
The first pillar is all about practicality. It's just this widespread belief among people that, on the whole, this government is good for us, that it provides some security and some advantages, and that honestly it's a better deal than the chaos or tyranny that might take its place.
Now, the second pillar, this one's all about legitimacy that's earned over time. I mean, why do we accept that a certain family or a particular constitution has the right to rule? Hume says a huge part of it is just habit and tradition. Antiquity, as he puts it, always creates the opinion of right. We just get attached to the systems we know. It's the simple power of, well, this is how it's always been done. And the third pillar is absolutely critical, property. People have to believe that the government will protect their stuff, their land, their money, their possessions. When people feel like their property is safe and secure, they're way more likely to go along with the system that's guaranteeing that security. Hume knew this had a massive influence on keeping things stable.
So at this point, you're probably thinking what I was thinking. Okay, this all sounds great, but what about the really obvious tools of power? What about money, rewards, and especially, what about fear? Where do those fit into this whole picture?
I mean, this is the natural objection, isn't it? Surely a ruler can buy loyalty with rewards or command people through the fear of punishment. And Hume doesn't ignore these powerful forces at all, but he categorizes them in a very specific and, frankly, a pretty brilliant way.
Okay, think of it like this. Opinion is the engine of a car. Things like fear and self-interest, they're the gasoline. They make the engine run faster and harder, for sure, but they can't create the engine itself. Hume calls them secondary principles. They can only reinforce an authority that's already there, an authority that was built on that foundation of opinion. And this illustrates the point perfectly. A tyrant is just one guy. His power to make you afraid depends entirely on his army, or his guards, or his police. And why do they obey him? Because of their opinion that he has the right to give them orders. If that opinion disappears, so does his power. So you see, fear doesn't create authority. It's just a tool used by an authority that opinion has already created.
So let's see how this whole theory actually plays out in the real world. Hume wasn't just sitting in a room thinking this stuff up. He actually applied this idea to the history he knew best, looking at the dramatic power shifts in the English government.
And this is where it gets really, really interesting for me. Hume makes this incredibly sharp observation. over the long run, political power always seems to follow economic power. Or, as he put it, the balance of power eventually has to line up with the balance of property. If one group in society has most of the wealth but has no political voice, well, that situation is just not going to last.
He uses the House of Commons as his star example. See, for a long time, the Commons, representing the merchants and landowners, they controlled a huge share of England's property, but their actual political power in the beginning was pretty low. So, Hume argued, because their economic influence was so vast, it was basically inevitable that they would gradually stretch their authority until their political power finally matched their massive economic power.
So, what's the big takeaway here? Hume's theory. It gives us this powerful, almost like an X-ray vision to look at politics and power. It strips it all down to its most essential and often totally invisible element.
Okay, let's pull it all together. The big one is that all government, no matter what kind, rests on opinion. And that opinion is built on 3 pillars: our belief that the government is useful, that it has a right to rule, and that it'll protect our stuff. We also learned that things like fear are secondary. They can strengthen power, but they can't create it out of thin air. And finally, we saw that over time, political power will almost always shift to wherever the economic power is.
And that leaves us with a really provocative thought. I mean, Hume wrote this nearly 250 years ago, but his central idea feels more relevant today than ever. If he's right, what are the core opinions holding up the governments of our world today? And maybe the most critical question of all is, what happens when those foundational opinions start to crumble?